Mayor Regina Romero. She was elected in November of 2019 to be mayor, becoming the first woman and the first Latino mayor of Tucson. She was raised by immigrant farm workers right here in Arizona. Regina broke barriers early on as the first member of her family to vote and the first to graduate from college. Prior to being elected mayor, Regina Romero served as Ward 1 City Council member from 2007 to 2019. She is committed to creating Tucson as a sustainable, thriving desert city of the future through her policy priorities that include creating a climate resilient Tucson, support for working families, including housing affordability, investing in our infrastructure and parks, robust economic development, including supporting small businesses, equitable access and investment for all. Mayor Romero is the chair of the Latino Alliance of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and co-chair of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. She is an inaugural member of the Mayors Alliance to End Childhood Hunger. Mayor Romero is a member of the Climate Mayors Network, a nationally recognized voice on climate action. Mayor Romero holds a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Arizona and a postgraduate certificate from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Regina is married to Ruben Reyes. They have 2 children, Emiliano and Luciana. Let's give a real warm Democrats of Greater Tucson welcome to our guest speaker, Mayor Regina Romero.
Hi, good afternoon, Democrats of Greater Tucson. Thank you so much for having me with you. Thank you, Joseph, for such a warm welcome and everyone for attending. I am having my lunch right now, and I'm also having tea and water. So if you see me, drinking and eating, please don't judge me. It's around the point that I have to eat lunch. So
make yourself.
So I don't know if some of you went to the brunch yesterday at Desert Diamond Casino for the Pima County Democratic Party. It was very well attended, very well organized, and we had an incredible speaker that really talked about how we as Democrats should be evangelizing and organizing instead of agonizing. We have had leadership at every level of government that we can brag about. And so we really, as Democrats, have guiding principles that guide us to do the right thing for our communities. And, from President Biden and Vice Mayor Harris passing historic legislation on investment in infrastructure with the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS, every piece of interest that we have as Democrats nationally is being taken care of. Here in the state, we're incredibly savvy, and we worked hard and organized hard to elect our new governor, Governor Katie Hobbs, our new Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, our new Attorney General, Chris Mays. We elected U.S. Senator Mark Kelly. And then here in Tucson, back in 2019, we elected me as your mayor, first woman ever in the history of the city of Tucson to be elected mayor of Tucson, and only second Latina or Latino Mexican American to be elected in the history of the city of Tucson. It was 1875. The last time a Mexican American, Tucson had a Mexican American mayor. So we did incredible, and we sent we have a all Democratic mayor and council, be it different shades of blue, but we are all Democrats, and we're doing incredible work in the midst of a global pandemic. So I promised you a lot of things when I ran for mayor in 2019. I promised you that I would work on affordable housing and on child homelessness. I talked to you back then about my belief in the Housing First program, which is basically a evidence-based model to shelter unsheltered folks that want to be helped, and wrap around the services once they have a bed to sleep in, a safe place to sleep in, and a place that gives them a warm meal. Once you stabilize that person, then you wrap around the services, mental, behavioral health, veterans services. We connect them to their needs. We passed that at the mayor and council level. Thanks to American Rescue Plan dollars, we were able to purchase land and vacant hotels to practice our Housing First model. First time ever in the history of Tucson, we hired our first Housing First director. In terms of affordable housing, I led on asking our housing and community development department to put together a housing affordability strategy for Tucson, because believe it or not, we didn't have a strategy. We didn't have an action plan for affordability in our city. And so the HAS plan, the House Affordability Strategy for Tucson, was passed in record time. And off of the HAS plan, we started moving on action, right? Because I usually like to call them action plans instead of just plans. Because once we put a strategy together, I'm an action-oriented person. I have the support of my colleagues on the council to move forward. And because of that housing action plan, we passed the first casita ordinance in the city of Tucson. And we passed the source of income protection for the city of Tucson. Something that, by the way, the previous general wanted to take us to court on. And we stood our ground and waited for Chris Mays to win. And took the source of income protection issue to Chris Mays, and she agreed with the city of Tucson that is something that is lawful and we could do chartered city. We spent more than $15 million on our Housing First. We have a few projects on city-owned land that we're going to create mixed use, affordable income, and mixed income living, senior living. And so those are on the pipeline, and we're acting fast and furiously on so many of the issues that I talked to you about back in 2019. In terms of community safety, we know that in the past 3 years, public safety has been something that people are questioning, especially young people and people of color throughout this country are questioning how we deliver public safety in cities around the country. And in 2020, in the midst of the protests, because of the murder of George Floyd, the city of Tucson had our very own in custody death of Carlos Adrian Ingram Lopez. When George Floyd and Carlos Adrian happened, I said, I'm going to change the way, the structure, and how we deliver community safety in our community. And I created the first ever community safety health and wellness program, look community safety in a holistic way. And we hired our first ever community safety health and wellness director that worked hand in hand with our police chief, Chief Kasmar, with our fire chief, Chief Chuck Ryan, with our 911 communications director. And we're trying to look at how we deliver safety to our community. We did hundreds of surveys online in person to people, asking them what do they think community safety is. And they said, besides able to call 911 and having a police officer response to their calls, they also want to see infrastructure in their neighborhoods. They want to see good parks in their neighborhoods. They want to have tree canopy. They want to have good, connections from their schools to their homes. They want investment in their neighborhoods, and they want to be able to call our police department and be routed to the right work, right? We have to put the right work in the right hands. Not every call in the city of Tucson needs to be answered by a police officer. As a matter of fact, 70% or more of the calls that go into 911 are not emergencies. 6% or 75%, I believe, of the calls that go into 911 are people that just need help. Sometimes it's behavioral and behavioral health issues. Sometimes it's seniors that need a ride to the store. Sometimes it's, people in crisis, a mental health crisis. And so everyone is on board with this, right? My council colleagues, myself, which introduced the issue, our city manager, our chief of police, our fire chief, our 911 communications. We're working together to deliver community safety to our city and to our residents in a different way. And again, evidence-based approaches, which is something that I've always advocated for. And then, of course, mobility and transportation, as you well know, we passed a historic proposition in term investment. Proposition 411 passed last year, thanks to you all, the voters of Tucson, with 73% of the vote. 80% of the $750 million that we're going to gather over 10 years is going to resident street repair. 20%, $150 million is going to bicycle and pedestrian improvements in our city. We are killing way too many people in our streets because they're biking or walking. And so thanks to you, we are seeing $750 million in our residential streets and repairing them in one way, shape, or form, and $150 million for mobility issues. And then, of course, we talked about economic development in the campaign trail. We created, believe it or not, the city of Tucson did not have a small business program where we would help small businesses from getting their licenses to opening their doors to offer locally owned services to our community. And so I wish that we create a small business program. We hired a director for the first time ever in our city. We hired 3 small business navigators that really help small businesses navigate the systems in the city of Tucson to do everything from getting a license to getting training on how to run a business, how to do their finances, to remodeling a place and opening their doors and having a certificate of occupancy and navigating our planning and development services. Also hired for the first time ever in our history of the city, a international trade specialist, because of our geography, we're so close to Mexico. Mexico is our #1 trading partner. And so having an international trade specialist to try and attract foreign investment in the city of Tucson and expand that foreign investment, and hopefully having Mexican companies see Tucson as their headquarters so that they can expand into the rest of North America is important. And then last but not least, you know that one of the most important planks as I ran for mayor in 2019 was for us to have a healthy, sustainable and resilient city. And so we have been fast and furiously working on climate act in our city of Tucson. We started immediately with a bang, declaring a climate emergency in September of 2020. And by the way, all of this work, it was in the midst of a global pandemic. We were attending to an emergency not seen for 100 years in the world. And so besides doing all of the remediation work and protective work, and emergency work that we were dealing with the pandemic and trying to protect our community, we've been doing all this work. So climate emergency in 2020, that emergency defined what our commitment was and is for climate action in our city of Tucson. We've committed to be carbon neutral by 2030. We've committed to zero waste by 2050. We talked about an electric vehicle readiness roadmap for the city of Tucson. And since then, we've been hot to trot and in action as mayor and council in a very unified way. And so we passed an EV readiness roadmap and put it to work immediately, changed codes at our planning and development services to make sure that every home, residential, every business, commercial, and every apartment complex that is being built in the city of Tucson, starting in January of this year, is EV ready. And we got a lot of pushback from some, but we got it done. We got it over the hump. And I believe we're the first city in Arizona that got that to pass. We all changed the name of our landfill to the Los Reales Sustainability Campus because we want to, in our road to zero, becoming a waste city by 2050, we want to see our landfill as a place where we have resources, because we want to reuse the methane gas that the landfill produces, because we are getting ready to open a tree center in partnership with Trees for Tucson, because that place, our sustainability campus, is a place where we can reuse, reduce, and recycle. And so we've been changing structures and systems in the city of Tucson last longer than I will be alive. When I've served all my years as a mayor of the city of Tucson, all of these programs will survive me and will continue serving residents in the city of Tucson. So we passed our climate action and climate action and resiliency plan. We call it Tucson Resilient Together. Tomorrow, we are going to have a presentation of our implementation plan, how we're going to implement the plan as we move forward. And we're putting aside funds annually to make sure that we have money, not just from American Rescue Plan dollars, which we're putting to work. We have more than $9 million we're putting to work for our climate action plan, but we're going to put money aside every year for the next 5 years to continue doing the work of climate mitigation. And, as a mayor, I've talked about having a fair, just, equitable, sustainable, thriving desert city that can survive into the future and that can provide a good quality of life for everyone in our city. So I remain committed to it. I've been able to submit all of my signatures to get my name on the ballot. For 2023, I'm officially running for mayor again, and there is no other Democrat that's running. So I'm it. I am your candidate, and want to have your support and help as we move forward with plenty more to do. So I'm going to open up for questions so that you all, if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I do have a question for you to begin with. It seems the consolidation of the city and county libraries way back when seemed to be a win-win, especially for citizens. Have you had any idea, maybe working with our Democratic sheriff and our Democratic county board of supervisors, to possibly consolidate more services in law enforcement and fire protection?
Well, first and most importantly, what you should know is that I am very committed to partnering with Pima County. And I will be absolutely honest with you, because of the change in their administrator and with the new chair of the Board of Supervisors, Chair Adelita Grijalva, it has been much, much easier to have a healthy communication with Pima County. And we are committed to working together in terms of resolving our unsheltered homeless issues in our city. We have, because the court system is Pima County, and here in the city of Tucson, our police officers, we have a homeless outreach team at TPD. So we have to together and find solutions in how we smooth over the process for people. We've been recently talking about both Pima County and the city of Tucson are receiving funds from the opioid settlement that you have all been hearing around in the news, receiving money for the next 20 years. Asking us to consolidate sheriff and TPD is something that's monumental and very big. Although I do believe that the residents of the Tucson get taxed twice, because we pay into, with property taxes, we do pay into paying for the sheriff's department, and we pay for TPD. So we do, that's a long-term question, to be honest with you, Joe. But partnering, maybe consolidating our courts. We tried it back when, maybe about 6 years ago, tried that conversation and didn't work out. That's something that I do have on my to-do list when I get reelected. And so probably consolidating the courts, or maybe even locating together so that we do much more work in there, carry the maintenance and operation of that court system together. But there's much that we're doing together, and more that we can.
Great. Thank you so much. We have George Beverly, one of our board members, has a question for you. George, unmute yourself.
Hello, Mayor. Nice to see you again.
Hi, George. Nice to see you.
I have two questions. One, I just came from a nationalization ceremony, which was awesome. So I got to see people actually participate in that. So the question on that one is what are we doing for individuals that are coming from other countries that are trying to be productive citizens and have not yet received their visas, or they need to redo their visas because of certain things that's going on in either federal or state. And then the second question is your energy plan sounds great, but what about those the people with lower incomes? How can they subsidize to be able to get a electric car? I mean, they're struggling right now just to get a car, period. So how is the city going to adapt to those people who are low income and transitioning into all electric?
So for our low income, I'm going to answer the second question first, because it's much more relevant to the city of Tucson. Your first question, even though the city of Tucson has been an immigrant welcoming community for over 10 years. So your second question, we have been providing free transit services the past 3 years in the city of Tucson. We able to use American CARES money and then American Rescue Plan dollars to be able to provide free transit services. This is free bus, free streetcar, and free paratransit services. These paratransit services are door-to-door services. This is for our disabled community, elderly community, to call a van. They go pick them up at their house and go drop them off at their doctor's appointment, at their grocery store, and then go get them and drop them off again. So it's kind of like an Uber service, but with vans that are wheelchair ready and have trained people to, to get people in and out. So that is something that we have been doing, never seen before in the history of the city of Tucson. That's why when I talk about we're changing structures and systems, we are absolutely doing that with mobility issues too. So we're doing that. We're hoping that we can keep transit free, George, but it's money from where riders usually would produce about $10 million in fares. And so we're trying to find a solution that could bring in other partners in the city, Pima College, TUSD, U of A. Those are our big transit riders, and we want them to bring in money to the table so that we can continue the possibility of providing additional free transit. And then the first question, we are, as a council member that I served more than 12 years on the council. I brought a resolution to the city council to create an immigrant welcoming community. But nonprofit partners are the ones that do a lot, like IGR and Casalitas and other churches throughout, Catholic Community Services and Jewish Community Services. They provide a lot of services to help immigrants, asylum seekers, and refugees to feel at home in Tucson. So they do services for us.
Okay. And we have another board member, Steve Early. Steve, unmute yourself and ask your question to Regina.
Thank you for being here, Madam Mayor. My questions, I'll ask the same as I asked the last two people running for the city council this time. How do we, as residents of Tucson, figure out why parts of the city looks like a war zone and other parts look like Beverly Hills? I mean, it looks like the money goes where the money is, and the money doesn't go to where the people need it. And I give you Empire neighborhood as an example, because I currently live there, but I am being forced to move out because it has become intolerable.
So thank you so much for your question. And Steve, this has been an issue that I have been carrying as a member for 12 years. And way before that, when I worked at Pima County Neighborhood Reinvestment. And as a mayor, I promised and I vowed that we would have to deal with this issue head on. It has been historical disinvestment in areas of our city that have been, frankly, ignored. They have been ignored by not just other mayors, but they've been ignored by Pima County as well. Every layer of government have ignored this community, and this has been happening for decades. And let me tell you how it started. It started because of racist redlining from banks and our own federal government in really pushing people outside to areas of our community that they belonged in. And so every layer of government has not been able to keep up in terms of the investment that these neighborhoods need. I started working in Pima County Neighborhood Reinvestment because from infrastructure to trees, to parks, to to even educational opportunities, these areas that have not been invested in. So that's something that I'm working heavily on. We actually created an equity officer position in the city of Tucson, and we hired our first ever equity officer to take a look at our budget and to really try and help us find solutions as mayor and council solutions head on. And so we've been, as I've been mayor, I've been focusing our infrastructure investments, even our tree investments in areas of our city that typically are low-income areas that have been historically disinvested in. We are looking at our Tucson Million Trees program. We have an equity map to plant trees in areas of our city. The lowest income areas have the hottest heat island effect in our community. So we're planting trees there. We're investing in our parks there. We are investing in our roads, creating walking trails for the children from their home to their schools, to their local schools. Just recently, since about maybe a year and a half ago, I started focusing in Western Hills and Las Vistas neighborhoods that have not seen even water lines. Their water lines were 65 years old. They'd had no sidewalks. They had no trees. They have the oldest and more dilapidated roads, residential roads in our community. And so I'm layering investments in those two neighborhoods that are side to side, and making sure that we're making more than $15 million investments. But Steve, I hear you. We've got to do better, not just as a city, but as a county, as a state and federal government, to make sure that we're investing in these wonderful, beautifully cultural, wonderful neighborhoods that have been ignored for such a long time. And by the way, also focusing on community safety, health, and wellness in those neighborhoods, making sure that TPD and each and every one of our departments we're looking also on where the crime is happening and trying to solve crime through investment, infrastructure and trees, and also like code enforcement, working with parks and recreation. It's all hands on deck effort, but decades of disinvestment and marginalization have gotten us to where we are. So we cannot solve 3 years. We need definitely more and more buy-in from our community. One more question.
Okay, Susie Anderson has a question, one of our board members.
Hi, Mayor Romero. So glad to have you here today. What I wonder about is the infill. Tim Steller had an opinion in the paper this weekend regarding infill which seem to be all storage units. They're doing one that's 7 stories tall. We have a lot of them in Tucson, and because we've got an aging population that likes to downsize, it's I'm old. I want to store my stuff. How do we get away from the builders who want to build for profit, understandably, but yet it's not much that they're giving back to the community when we need housing. And I've heard several people talk about all of the empty buildings that we have in Tucson, the huge areas like malls and things like that. Is there a way to utilize that space?
Yes. So one, most importantly, I share the loathe of storage facilities. But when they have when they have zoning they have the right to zoning, we can't do much. I'll tell you an example, a perfect example of a storage facility that I fought hand and tooth. Right there on St. Mary's or 6th Street and the freeway, there's a U-Haul. I was a representative on the council at the time. I did not want that storage facility because I felt like you do that we could build some, better affordable housing and mixed use facility, but they had the zoning. And so that's why it's so important. And the state legislature, by the way, trying to take all zoning laws out of the hands of local control, out of mayor and councils from different cities and towns in Arizona is ludicrous. And that's exactly they want to take, why the Republicans in the state legislature want to take local control from zoning. That's why it's so important for and councils to have that control in the city. 2, affordable housing, in terms of affordable housing and infill development. For decades, the knowledge has been that the less infill in urban areas, the more we sprawl out to beautiful desert landscapes. So creating infill is a strategy for protecting our dirt and our environment and creating an urban area that people can use transit. It's a transit-oriented development that we want to see in our city. Since I became mayor, I led on creating a development company in the city of Tucson. I pushed on creating a development company. So you guess why? Because we don't have to wait for developers to create and develop affordable housing projects in our city. It is hard for private for-profit developers to create affordable housing because it needs a lot of investment from state, local, and federal government in terms of putting in money to these projects. So we created our own development company, affordable development company. And we're pushing forward on create first project. For the first time in a long time, the city of Tucson received a low-income housing tax credit from the state of Arizona Department of Housing, and we're creating a senior housing on Grant and Oracle area. We're calling it the Milagro on Oracle, 63, 68 senior housing units. To create affordability. And so we have other land that we own that we're looking at creating affordable mixed use housing developments within the city of Tucson. The other question was, we talked about infill and why it's important to transit-oriented development.
Can you use any of the existing empty structures? Or
yes. One more thing, Susie. We have tomorrow, as a matter of fact, both Councilmember Lane Santa Cruz and I brought forward we are going to give direction to the city manager and staff to create policy at Planning and Development Services, zoning codes, that we could use unused parking lots and unused buildings and unused and vacant lots throughout the city of Tucson to to make it easier to develop those parking lots and unused buildings and vacant lots throughout the city to create more affordable housing opportunities and make it easier to develop in those unused lots.
What a great subject. Mike, Brian has some questions from the chat room, and would that be okay, Mayor?
We have 2 minutes, I'm being told.
Okay, well, we're so glad you're here.
Dr. Barbara Warren wants to know are we prepared for a major citywide power outage midsummer? Do we have the facilities that we need in order to address the need for everybody for extreme heat exposure in the summer.
Who's speaking? I'm sorry.
It's Mike Ryan.
Oh, this is a chat room question. Yes, absolutely. We are getting there. We instituted the last 3 years, we instituted cooling centers in the city of Tucson. But one of the things that is discussed and that the community can put on our climate action plan is that we create resiliency hubs for the entire community throughout Tucson to be able to have a place where we can generate either heat or cold air, where we can house people to be able to, if there are outages, major outages. So that's part of the implementation plan for our climate action plan. Make sure that we're having solar generated generators, that we have water to be able to those centers, that we start creating that plan for the possibility of big power outages in the summer. And so we're headed in that direction. We've already started with the concept of cooling centers, and that's part of our climate action and adaptation plan.
Okay, well, we love for you to stay longer, but we understand how busy you are. And we really want to give you a very warm thank you for being with us today, Mayor. Did a great job.
You know what, Joe, I do want to clarify something before I leave, because
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that based on the people that have their hands up, some people have questions about this. I want to clarify what Proposition 412 is and what the city of Tucson can do with a franchise agreement, and what it cannot do with a franchise agreement, because there are a lot of theories out in the community that are just basically not possible. And there are people saying that we did not give enough time to have a conversation with the community about this franchise agreement. As a matter of fact, the franchise agreement conversation has been happening the last 18 months in the city of Tucson. And one of the big concerns and big questions with the franchise agreement with TEP was undergrounding. So because we want to leave diesel and gas, and are moving towards an electric future, companies like TEP have to expand how they're delivering their electricity. And one of the ways that they expand delivery of electricity is through power lines, and expanding their systems to make them more resilient so that we don't have blackouts and power outages in the middle of our summers. So the conversation started with the idea of undergrounding, because one of the ways that they could get more electric power, trying to get more electric power to the U of A, to UMC, because the U of A and UMC are committing to 100% renewable energy by a certain date, just like the city of Tucson is. And so instead of investing in the old infrastructure they had, they needed about $12 million. They started talking about expanding and doing new lines. Sam Hughes and other neighborhoods did not want to see these power lines through their neighborhood, so the underground conversation started. The city of Tucson started that conversation, attorney to attorney with TEP, because we wanted to see this undergrounding, which, by the way, Vice Mayor Kasachik was very supportive of. And so the conversation started, it came back to the mayor and council said, we want to be as much as we possibly can in terms of sustainability efforts and investing in our climate resiliency plan. So we started working with TEP. TEP is franchise agreement is using our rights of way. That's why we charge them for it. We are committing money from that 97 cents a month, I think it's going to be. We're committing money to our low income assistance program that TEP has, into climate action and adaptation funding, but the majority of those funds, the first 5 years, is going to go into the effort of undergrounding power lines. And that is because a lot of residents in our city wanted to see undergrounding efforts. And so as we move forward in working with TEP, one of the other things that we asked them to do is to create infrastructure in our rights of way for electric vehicles. I also asked them to invest climate action and adaptation plan, which we will be able to use those funds for as well. And I asked the CEO of TEP to get to the delivery of 100% renewable energy to City of Tucson services and operation by 2030. We're on our way to do that. In the franchise agreement, the City of Tucson will be able to review in year 10 and year 15, renegotiate anything that is not working in that plan. No other city in Arizona has this type of franchise agreement as the City of Tucson. If it gets passed, it will be the most progressive franchise agreement in Arizona. The most progressive. We as a city mayor and council cannot do the work of the Arizona Corporation Commission. The Arizona Corporation Commission has the responsibility to basically negotiate rates and how much TEP is charging to asking them and pushing our utility companies for more renewable energies, and 3, making sure that they are working with cities in Arizona to create these franchise agreements. So I just wanted to clarify these points because I'm hearing a lot of things that people didn't have enough time, that it's not good, that the city didn't go far enough. Didn't go far enough because we're not the regulators. There are certain things we cannot ask TEP to do through our franchise agreement. And so even though some people are disappointed because in their mind, we could have asked more, we asked as much as we could ask as the City of Tucson through a franchise agreement. So I just wanted to clarify that because there's a lot of misinformation out there and not enough information. Well, maybe not the correct information that should be out there. That's why I support Proposition 412, just like others are supporting Proposition 412. There was a really good article, I think it was on either today or on Sunday, of all of the groups that are supporting Proposition 412. And there's this weird group that is a no on 412, but for all the wrong reasons, nothing that you all would support. But read the article, it's pretty informative.
I think that's on Arizona Movement area.
Yeah, I think it's either today or yesterday, I'm not too sure, but I wanted to clarify that before I left.
Would you like to leave a way we can get in touch with you with support or contributions?
Yes, especially if you're a City of Tucson voter. Please go to www.votereginaromero.com to donate online. Like I said, you have no other choice. I'm the only Democrat running, so you're going to have to support me. I'll leave with you the website to my the address to my website. You can donate online. You could find out information about what we're doing in the campaign. I'm going to focus entirely in the primary to help my colleagues win re-election. Nikki Lee, Councilmember Santa Cruz, Councilmember Paul Cunningham are all running for re-election, and they have been very helpful to me, and I hope that they win as well. So before I jump off, I'll leave you my address to my website, and I'm running clean, so I need another 150 City of Tucson voter contributions of $10 or more to get my matching funds. So $10 is the minimum, $500 is the maximum, and anything in between is wonderful.
Well, great. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. And it's been a great program. Let's give another real thankful little round of applause to Mayor Romero.
Thank you.